Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome to this CSS tutorial on centering a container or centering an element more precisely. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in this tutorial is we're going to be starting to look at how we might create a main container for our site, or our website, with some contents in it, nothing special, and then we're going to center this element on the page. So we're going to horizontally align it or horizontally center it on the page. And it's relatively simple, but it's something that you need to know that's, extremely important, I guess. And you can also do this with elements within that element and then elements within that element, so you can center anything by just sort of bouncing it off the left and the right by using a specific property, which we'll reveal in a moment. Okay, so the first thing we want to go ahead and do is actually create our container. You can see that I've got my style sheet here linked in my markup, and my style sheet at the moment is empty. I've got my browser open. I'm just going to click inspect element here so we can sort of see what's going on. Obviously we've got nothing on our page at the moment. Let's first of all go ahead and create our container and just pop some contents inside of it. So I'm going to say div id equals something. Let's go back and fill that in, and we're going to say container. Now in here is some content, so I'm going to say some content. Okay, so back to our page. Let's go ahead and refresh. You can see that we've got some content. If we just open up our body here, we've got our container here with some content inside. Nothing special, just looks like a plain page. Now we want to go ahead and center this. So before we go ahead and center it, we're going to specify a width. Now this is extremely important, and the reason being is we can't center something that's 100% width of the page, and at the moment this element has a default property of display block, and this automatically creates its width to its very outer container. And its very outer container at the moment is just body, and therefore you can see the blue area on the page is this current div container. Now this is a problem. We can't style something that's 100% the width of the page. It will just remain in the same place, so we need to give it a width. So the first thing we'll do is in our style sheet we will target container, and we will give this a width of, let's say, we'll say 900 pixels. Let's make it a bit smaller, make everything a bit simpler. So 600 pixels, refresh, nothing looks different, but when we go ahead and hover over this element, you can now see that the blue area is the width of the container, and that's important, which is 600 pixels. And now you can see that we can actually go ahead and center this because, it's allowed to float in the middle of the page, essentially. Okay, so let's go ahead and just give this a background color quickly, just so we can see where it is. I'm going to give this a background color of black, just so we can easily see that it's properly centered. And anything inside of this, I'm going to give a text color white. So the result of that is that. Okay, so relatively straightforward. Okay, so how do we go ahead and center this? Now, back in the old days, you would go ahead and maybe say center, which is an appalling way of doing something. What we want to do is we want to be clever. Now we want to set the margins on this container. So we're going to be using the margin property. Now I'm going to take a minute just to explain the margin property and what values it can hold. And I'm just going to do this. Now doing that is an extremely good use or a good practice to get into, and I do it every time I declare a margin or a padding or anything that requires these values. And what these are is they are measurements. The first one here is north, so this is north of the container, i.e. at the top. This is the east of the container, i.e. the right hand side. This is the south of the container, i.e. the bottom, and this last one here is the west, i.e. the left. So you might have come across this before: margin top, margin bottom, margin left, and margin right. So margin is what we call a shorthand property for all four of these values. Now you might be thinking, oh, it doesn't really make sense. We've got margin top, bottom, left, right, but I was just talking about north, east, south, and west. It's all the same thing. You can call it whatever you like. If it's easier to remember top, bottom, left, right, you know, it's not in that order in the shorthand property, but you know, if it's easier to remember it like that, then that's fine. However, north, east, south, west comes naturally in order, and it's a lot easier to remember. So that's how I always remember it. So the north of the container, we don't really need to worry about. You know, we want to go ahead and position. We want to give a margin on the left and a margin on the right, don't we? Because we want to center it. Now, let's just think about this the hard way around. At the moment, our body is 1,249 pixels long. Okay, so let's just quickly bring up a calculator. So 1,249 pixels. Now, if we were to say take away the length of the container, which is 600 pixels, and divide that by 2, we've got the width on either side that we should give this, which is 324. Now, this is the wrong way to do it. So before anyone starts to worry, if you do know how to do this, you probably shouldn't be watching the tutorial, but this is the wrong way to do it. So we had this value here, 324. So if we were to say we want the margin on the right hand side to be 324 pixels, and we want the margin on the left hand side to be 324 pixels, essentially what we're doing here is we're centering that in the middle of the page. So we've essentially done what we want to do. However, this you know, is going to be somewhat the wrong way to do things, and the reason for this is if we were to say reduce the size of this, you know, look what happens. So put that back. Let's go ahead now and do this the right way around. So margin, north, east, south, west. Good tip there. I'm instead going to set these to auto. Now what auto is going to do is it's quite hard to explain, but north and south we can ignore. Left auto, right auto. If both are set to auto, it just shoves it in the middle. Okay, that's the easiest way I can explain it. When I refresh, we get exactly the same result. You saw it switch a tiny bit to the right there. That's because I didn't include the point values on the CSS. Now you see that when I resize the browser, it automatically updates, because this value of left and right or west and east always going to be auto. So you can see that it's sort of resizing itself as we go. Okay, so that's pretty handy. That's the correct way to position something in the middle. Now we can reduce this even further. Now what we can do, and this isn't something you need to know, you can keep it like this if you want. Let's just say you wanted 20 pixels on the top and 50 pixels on the bottom, then you wouldn't be able to do what I'm about to do. But let's say we had something like that, 20 pixels on the top, 20 pixels on the bottom. Okay, that's 20 pixels on the top now, which is this, you can see this space here. We've got the yellow on the top and the yellow on the bottom. We can shorten this down even more. We can just get rid of this first one. Okay, so this is saying the top and the bottom. This is saying the left and the right. If you just wanted to center it, you could do naught auto. Okay, so 20px auto is just going to mean 20 pixels on the top, 20 pixels on the bottom, 20 pixels, auto on the left, auto on the right. So when we refresh, we get exactly the same result as before. So that is how to center a element in CSS. And in fact, I think it's worth noting that we can go ahead and do this within as well. So let me just quickly demonstrate this. We'll say div inner, and feel free to turn off the video if you're bored of this now. So content in the middle, let's just go ahead and refresh. We've got the content there. Let's go ahead and style this inner. So hash inner. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the background, if I can type it properly, background to white, and I'm going to set the color of the text to 000, which is black. So there we go. Now what's actually happened here is this inner container spans the whole width of this element, so it's sort of blanked out the black, if that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and set a width to the inner container. We'll say 200 pixels, and let's refresh. Okay, so you can see that that's sort of there. It's quite hard to visualize, I guess, because it's cut it off. Now let's go ahead and center that. So margin 0 auto. In fact, let's set the top to 10 pixels and the bottom to 10 pixels, and then you get this lovely centered element just here. actually, sorry, no. There, we'll set that to 0, and the container will give a padding of 10 pixels. And then when we refresh, we get this. So we've got a centered element on the outside, and then we've got a centered element on the inside. So hopefully you've got the gist of things. This was only supposed to be a basic demonstration of the margin property and how we can set the left and right to auto. You've seen the longhand version, you've seen the shorthand version, and then you've seen this even shorter version.